Ave spectatores, Marcus Tullius Arnaudus vos salutat. And on top of saying ciao in my native language, Latin, I'm also going to film a video review today of a game called Iacta Est, a game that depicts the death of the Republic, of the Roman Republic, that is the Roman civil wars that brought to the transition from the Republic to the Empire. The game comes in a Ziploc bag. It is a French game designed by Frederic Bray with the artwork of Pascal da Silva. These are two authors that I like very much in the past, and I like this work of theirs too. The theme is what I told you. The rule book is very well done, good quality. It is in English, even though the game is originally in French. 17 pages, no, I should say 19 pages, including tables and scenarios. It is a war game that really describes the intricacy of military warfare with political warfare, with political manipulation, the political and military aspects of the war and the ways in which these aspects interweaves are very well captured here. This also means that there is a certain level of complexity that you have to get used to, even though the game is not particularly complex overall. But the war game part, strictly speaking, moving, attacking, and things like that, is very straightforward. It is beginner's level. But then there is a full apparatus of rules to depict the complexity of the political aspects of the war, and that is a further layer of rules and a further layer of complexity that definitely you have to learn well. The result is particularly rewarding, but you have to be able to play on both tables, the military one and the political one. The map, you see it here, it is printed on thick, sturdy paper. It looks nice, if a little essential. It depicts the regions of the Roman Empire as they appeared in this period in time, and they're surrounded by regions of other populations that do not belong to the empire yet, and they may come into play later. Depending on the scenario that you're using, some may already be activated, and other populations may become active during gameplay. There are quite a bit of scenarios. There are 7 scenarios of very different length and complexity, from the monster campaign game to short introductory scenarios such as scenario number 3, which is the Pharsalus campaign, or scenario 5, which is the Philippi campaign. I would recommend starting from those. We have counters, well done, nice looking, fairly thick. The counter tray that you see here does not come with the game. It is something that I added. The art on the counters is really nice. The military units are represented in a very detailed and pleasant way. You have leaders and you have stratagems, which are pretty much event markers, and then various types of counters and the markers that are used to, well, keep track of things on the map. Just again to give you a sense of some of the units. Leaders are extremely important in the game. There's a lot of information printed on the leaders markers. On top of the name, of course, there are 4 numbers here, and they represent the strategic ratings, which is the number of impulses that a leader can contribute to a turn. Each turn, you add together the strategical rating of the commanding leader of each of the 2 parties. This is a 2 players game, and that has a number of impulses that will be played during the game. Totally, during the game, those impulses are shared friendly between the 2 players. And the 2 players represent the Republican Party and the Caesarian Party. Then you have the commanding capacity, which influences movement. You have the political capacity, very important for all things political, and the tactical bonus, which is to be used in combat. Other units. For other military units, the main numbers are the strength points and the average quality. Some units also have a tactical bonus, which is better if you don't have to use it. It's better if you use the tactical bonus of your leader, but sometimes units do not have a leader with them, then you use the best tactical bonus that you can find in your army. Moving a little closer to the map, as you can see, the regions of the Roman Empire are divided in areas, and there are also cities on the map. Each region is associated with a box that gives you crucial information about that region. One such important piece of information is the number of areas that you need to control in order to be the controller of the region, and also the number of cities within the region that you need to control. If you have control of those elements or these requirements, then you can score the associated amount of points. Here you have the number and type of troops that you can recruit in that region, and the last piece of information is the one on top of here. I kept it for last, and this is the number of legions that you need to keep in the region, in each region, as garrisons. And you cannot voluntarily break that rule. You cannot voluntarily keep regions ungarrisoned. Garrisoning regions is extremely important because of one aspect of the game that I like very, 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 very much, which is the fact that, well, this is a competitive game, only one player will win, but there are conditions according to which both players can actually lose, even though the game doesn't necessarily feel like a semi-co-op because of this. It makes perfect sense. This is a civil war between different parties of the Roman Empire. You're trying to take control of the empire to destroy the other party, but at the same time you're fighting in your own homeland and using the resources of your own country. That means that there are certain actions during the game that, if taken too often, if they happen too often, they will raise the level of chaos in the empire to the point that the empire becomes impossible to govern, and at that point both players lose. So there's a way of tracking or keeping track of the level of chaos and order in the game. And for example, for each region that does not have the minimum number of legions garrisoning the region, the chaos increases. Also, the chaos increases if there are too many Roman legions on the map or not enough Roman legions on the map. The chaos increases if too many non-Roman peoples are at war with Rome, and also if too many leaders are killed. And the opposite is true. There are actions that will allow the chaos to decrease. For example, if leaders do not take do not take a role in combat, or if Egypt is allied with the Roman faction, or if there are no Roman people at war with Rome. Those are good things. That's something you have to keep an eye on, and I like that fact because it really forces the players to play, at least to an extent, according to historical guidelines. Now, as for the turn starts with the determination of initiative, who goes first. Then you have a phase in which new leaders may enter the fight, and then you have to see if new peoples are activated, if new non-Roman people enter the conflict. Non-Roman people coming from these other regions may enter the conflict in different ways, in two different ways actually. One is there is a random determination at the beginning of each turn where you see whether or not new peoples join the fight. At that point you have to determine who is the side that is joined by the new factions. And also during the turn there is a play of stratagems. Again, these one-time benefit chits that players can draw randomly and can then play to gain the associated benefit. When a non-Roman people is activated, it pretty much goes on the side of the player that makes that the people feel more secure. That is, if when a group is activated, suppose this group here, there is one of the two players that has troops that are adjacent to it, and the other side that doesn't, then the activated non-Roman people becomes an ally to the party that is not adjacent to them. What to me this represents is one of the two sides is gathering troops on the border of a non-Roman people. The other side starts talking to them and says, look, they're going to attack you. Why don't you join us? We're going to help you defend yourself. If neither of the players is adjacent to the newly activated non-Roman people, or if both players are adjacent, then you determine randomly which side gets the benefit of having, having that extra ally. Then you have administrative phases, administrative steps, such as, for example, determining the number of impulses, and then it gets to, quote-unquote, when it gets good, the military stuff. But the military stuff is really quite simple. Players alternate taking impulses, and they simply move forces on the map. Leaders help with movement. Movement is usually of a movement point per region. Of course, there are circumstances that will make that more expensive, for example, crossing rivers or crossing mountains. And if you enter an area with enemy troops, then the enemy has a chance of evading or attempting evasion. After the attempting evasion has been taken and failed, or in case the opponent doesn't want to evade, then when both players have their forces in the same region, in the same area, after movement, you resolve combat. There is a table of combat here. As you can probably see if you ever played a war game in your life, this is a pretty traditional system based on the ratio between the strength of the attacker and that of the opponent. You divide the strength of the attacker by that of the opponent. You find the correct column, and then you apply modifiers. There are modifiers that may shift the column, and that is based on the average quality of the attacker and the defender, the quality of the troops involved in the fight. And then you have modifiers. For example, there is a tactical bonus for the attacker, which is added to the die roll, the tactical bonus for the defender, which is subtracted to the die roll. You have an advantage if an enemy of Rome, a non-Roman army, is defending outside of Rome, home advantage for the defender, and if a non-Roman group is attacking within the borders of the empire, then home advantage for the Roman defenders, then there is a penalty for that attack. So being where you are more familiar with the terrain is an advantage. And other things such as having crossed a major river to launch an attack is a penalty. At the end of this, you simply cross-reference the final column after you apply the shifts with the final modified result, and you find the result. One attacks to the first result applies to the attacker, the second to the defender. Also, the result in white is the one of the winner of the battle, and though sometimes they kind of look the same, R and R, which means rien, no losses. This is a French word game, remember? No losses, but still the winner gets to stay there and the opponent has to retreat, the loser of the battle. And of course, there are also other penalties much more severe that do result in the loss of strength for one or both of the sides. As for the columns, I have to point out that there are such columns as 4/5 and 5/4, which may be a little confusing for many. I know they get a little bit to get used to. I've known experience where gamers that get confused by the 2/3 or 3/2, so the 5/4 can be, yes, particularly tricky. But this is pretty much for the basic military aspects of the conflict. Again, it really is a matter of moving and attacking. Then where does the complexity come from? Well, from the political side, from the fact that leaders come and go, the political assassination takes place, that the coups d'etat may take place, and there are several ways to react to that. Coup d'etat may fail, It may not fail, but then you somehow manage to isolate the new leader, the usurper. There is a situation, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, torn about it. Mixed feelings about it, where the two players switch sides. To me, this is very strange. It's the first time I've seen this, I've heard of this. I don't know. I'm a little bit, again, have mixed feelings about it. But by the way, I played the game in solitaire only, so that wasn't such a big deal for me because it was only me. And the game works very well in solitaire too, thanks to the random factors, especially the activation of Roman people. Then you have events that may happen, such as the assassination of Caesar, and that, of course, only applies to some of the scenarios, pretenders, and triumvirate. As you can see, the part of the rulebook that deals with the stratagems, with the events, the political aspects. Here are more stratagems that also have to do with political things. So the political aspects, the rules that govern the non-Roman people, who controls them and what they can do, more things about politics. This section of the rulebook is longer than the quote-unquote strictly military one, or at least it's just as long. But it's not just a matter of length, it is also more complex. Strictly speaking, the word gamey, the word gamey meat here is like this page, and the introductory pages at the beginning. So political aspect, really big, really important. Players alternate impulses, do all sort of devious political stuff, trying to cut each other's throat and stab each other in the back and do all sort of nasty Roman things, just like the Romans would. When you're in ancient Rome, do like the ancient Romans do. Players do this, alternate impulses, moving, attacking, scheming in the political background until, well, the end of the scenario, and at that point, depending on the victory conditions of the scenario, you determine who the winner is. Hoping, as I said earlier, that the two players haven't racked the empire earlier to the point that both players lose because there's no empire to fight for anymore. So I believe that this is a good game. Definitely I enjoyed playing it. I played it in solitaire only, and I found that the solitaire version works well. Sure, the stratagems that both sides have, and there are cases where this is pretty much key, and that layer there is one that I haven't explored fully. I'm not convinced about the switching sides things. I don't know, just too new to me, and kind of freaks me out a little bit. I don't know how to deal with it, so I can't say it's good or bad. I can say I can't deal with it. Somehow I can't puzzle it out in my mind. Not and I can't posit how it works. I don't know how to relate to it in an emotionally significant way. Other than that, the game looks good, the components are really nice. The rulebook, I said earlier that it is well laid out and well done. There may be a couple of times where there are some rules that apply to the same concept that are not in the same section, they're in different sections. But the rulebook is not long, and reading it all and kind of like put it all in your mind is not too hard, especially if you start by reading the military rules mainly, getting a sense of what the political rules are, and then you start playing. Because the first game or so may be a little slow because you need to go back to the rule book, see exactly what the stratagems do, what the political subtleties are. And then when you start implementing them correctly, still it looks like quote-unquote things happen randomly simply because if you're not entirely familiar with all of the political aspects of the game, then it turns out that when a political event happens, you hadn't set up things exactly like you wanted to. You hadn't thought everything through enough. So it takes a little bit to get familiar with the system to the point that you really start enjoying it. When that happens, the game is definitely enjoyable. The complexity, again, it's not that the game is difficult, it's a long rule book, but somehow all of these different aspects take a while before they click together. But when that happens, then of course that becomes a resource. The replay value is very good thanks to the fact that the activation of the non-Roman people is random. There are other random factors such as the drawing of the stratagems, the military, and that's good. All of these random things just give you that bit of unscrutability that makes the game definitely good for solitaire mode. And personally, also when I'm playing a game with another person, I like a certain degree of randomness. Um, I really like how the political aspects and the military aspect go together. I may have said this several times already, but to me this is like the best part of the game. Also, it is the part of the game that you kind of like have to work towards to get there, so that it's worth mentioning it more than once. The military aspect is very straightforward, very solid. The concepts that you have seen before, but some of these concepts never get old. And still, I find, for example, when it comes to the combat table, there are enough modifiers to make things strategically valuable. That means you really want to put together certain types of units and send them in certain places in certain moments for certain reasons against certain people. Which is the great difference between a war game and checkers. At the same time, it is not such a list of modifiers that the players may get in an analysis paralysis type of thing. Try to get +9 instead of +8.5, stuff like that. You have enough wrinkles and nuances around the combat system and the movement system to make things interesting and multidimensional, not enough to make the game too clunky, not in my experience at all. Large number of scenarios, that's a large plus. So overall, there's some very minor things that I wouldn't say I don't like, but that somehow don't appeal entirely to me. But the production is a solid one. I think this is definitely a good package. I think thanks to the high number of scenarios and the replay value, this is very good value for your money. If you're interested in the theme, if you're interested in a game that does capture both the political and military aspects of a conflict of this complexity, of a civil war, then Alea Iacta could be a good choice for you. Definitely was a good choice for me, and I enjoyed playing this game.